The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the stellar dawn. Commander Cale Thorne stood before the main screen, watching as another star system died. The void swarm had consumed everything in its path. Planets, moons, space stations. All gone. Nothing remained but empty space and floating debris. "Sir, we're getting the last transmission from the Outer Rim colonies," said his communications officer. Her voice shook as she spoke. They're all gone, sir. The swarm broke through their defenses 3 hours ago." Cale closed his eyes. The Outer Rim had been home to 12 billion souls from 7 different species. The Zephyrians, the Crystalline Collective, the Windwalkers, the Metal Singers, the Star Dancers, the Void Touched, and the Ancient Ones, all of them working together in the great alliance that had lasted for over 1,000 years. Now they were running out of time. "How long do we have?" Cale asked. 3 days, sir. Maybe less. The swarm is moving faster than our computers predicted. Cale turned to face Admiral Vera Nightwhisper. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her people, the Zephyrians, had been fighting wars for 3,000 years. They had never lost a battle until now. "Admiral, what are our options?" Cale asked. Vera looked at the tactical display. Red dots showed the swarm's position. There were too many to count. Each dot represented thousands of bioships, living creatures bred for war. The swarm had no mercy, no fear, no hesitation. They consumed everything in their path and grew stronger with each victory. "We have 47 battle cruisers, 200 destroyers, and 500 fighters," Vera said. "The swarm has over 10,000 capital ships and millions of smaller vessels. Our weapons can barely scratch their bioarmor. Our shields won't last more than a few minutes against their acid cannons. So we can't win? No, Commander, we cannot win. We can only choose how we die." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew this. Moment would come. The swarm had been moving through their galaxy for 5 years, consuming everything. World after world had fallen. The Alliance had tried everything. New weapons, better shields, faster ships. Nothing worked. Science Officer Lyra Starwind stepped forward. She was young for her species, only 200 years old. Her blue skin was pale with worry, but her eyes showed determination. "Sir, there might be one option we haven't tried," she said quietly. "What option?" Vera asked. "The humans." The bridge erupted in surprised voices. Some officers laughed. Others looked angry. The humans were barely more than children in the eyes of the Alliance. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Their ships were crude. Metal boxes compared to the elegant energy constructs of the Alliance. Their weapons were primitive projectile throwers instead of advanced plasma cannons. "The humans are savages," said Commander Thorne. "They still fight wars on their home planet. They haven't even united their own species. But they fight," Lyra said. "They fight when they should surrender. They fight when they should run. They fight when winning is impossible. Maybe that's what we need." Admiral Vera considered this. The humans had been observed by Alliance scouts for decades. They were a strange species, violent, unpredictable, and stubborn. When faced with impossible odds, other species would calculate the risks and make logical decisions. Humans seem to ignore logic entirely. Their technology is centuries behind. "Ours," Vera said. "What could they possibly do that we cannot?" "I don't know," Lyra admitted. "But we've tried everything else. We've used our best strategies, our finest weapons, our most advanced tactics. The swarm has countered all of it. Maybe we need something completely different." Cale looked at the display again. The red dots were moving closer. In 3 days, they would reach the capital world. 50 billion people would die. The Alliance would end. Everything they had built would be destroyed. "The High Council will never agree to this," he said. "The High Council is desperate," Vera replied. "Desperate people do desperate things." 2 hours later, the emergency session of the High Council convened. Representatives from all 7 species gathered in the great chamber. The Ancient Ones spoke first, their voices like whispers in the wind. They had lived for millions of years and seen many wars. They had never seen anything like the swarm. "A situation is clear," they said. "We face extinction. Our fleets cannot stop the enemy. Our worlds cannot be defended. We must consider all options." The metal singers clanged their disagreement. Their voices sounded like bells ringing in harmony. "The humans are too primitive. They would be destroyed in minutes." As star dancers moved in graceful patterns, their bodies flowing like liquid light. "But what if they are not destroyed? What if they succeed where we have failed?" The debate continued for hours. Some species argued for evacuation. Others wanted to make a final stand. The Crystalline Collective suggested surrender, hoping the swarm might spare some of their people. Finally, the Ancient Ones spoke again. "We will send the message. Not because we believe the humans can save us, but because we have no other choice. In 3 days, we will all be dead. If the humans wish to die with us, that is their decision." The message was prepared carefully. It contained everything the humans would need to know: star charts, tactical data, recordings of swarm attacks. Most importantly, it contained a simple plea for help. On Earth, Communications Officer Jake Martinez was working the night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Station. The station was new, built to listen for signs of intelligent life in the galaxy. For months, they had heard nothing but static and natural radio waves from distant stars. Then the signal came. Jake stared at his instruments in disbelief. The signal was clearly artificial. Complex patterns of data flowed across his screen. The computer systems began working to decode the message. "This is impossible," Jake whispered to himself. "This is actually happening." The message was clear once decoded. An alien alliance was under attack. They were facing extinction. They were asking for help. Jake reached for his phone with shaking hands. He had to wake up his commanding officer. He had to call the Pentagon. He had to tell someone that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors were about to die. Within hours, the message reached the highest levels of human government. Presidents and prime ministers were woken from their sleep. Military leaders gathered in emergency meetings. Scientists worked frantically to understand the alien technology described in the message. Admiral Lisa Thompson was called to the Pentagon at 3 in the morning. She was the commander of humanity's newest space fleet, built to explore the galaxy and defend Earth from unknown threats. She had never expected those threats to be real. "Ma'am, we need to know if this is possible," the Secretary of Defense said. "Can we reach their location? Can we actually help them?" Lisa looked at the star charts. The alien alliance was 300 light years away. Their fastest ships could make the journey in 2 weeks. But when they arrived, they would be facing an enemy that had already defeated civilizations far more advanced than humanity. "We can get there," she said. "But I won't lie to you. This is probably a suicide mission. We'll be outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Our weapons are primitive compared to theirs. Our ships are slow and clunky. But you'll go?" Lisa thought about it. Somewhere in the galaxy, billions of people were about to die. They had reached out to humanity in their final hour, hoping against hope that the primitive humans might somehow help. "Yes," she said, "we'll go. Not because we think we can win, but because it's the right thing to do." The human fleet began, preparing for departure. 47 ships, humanity's pride and joy, were loaded with supplies and ammunition. Crews volunteered for what everyone knew was a one-way mission. As the ships launched into the darkness of space, Heading toward a war they couldn't win, Jake Martinez sat in his monitoring station and wondered what he had started. He had given humanity its first contact with alien life. He just hoped it wouldn't be their last. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Zephyrian territory. Their ships looked crude and ugly compared to the sleek Alliance vessels. Where the aliens used smooth energy fields and crystalline structures, the humans had bolted metal plates and weapon turrets. Their ships looked like they had been built in a junkyard. Captain Ryan Burke stood on the bridge of the UE's Iron Will, studying the tactical display. The swarm was already here. Thousands of bioships swarmed around the Alliance fleet like angry insects. The alien ships were fighting desperately, but they were clearly losing. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the alien flagship," his communications officer said. "Put it through." Admiral Vera Nightwhisper's image appeared on the screen. She looked exhausted and confused. "Human vessel, this is Admiral Nightwhisper of the Zephyrian Alliance. We did not expect you to come. We are grateful, but you must understand, this is a hopeless battle. The swarm has already broken through our outer defenses." Ryan studied the tactical display. The Alliance had over 300 ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything in the human fleet. They had weapons that could destroy planets and shields that could stop almost any attack. But they were still losing. "Admiral, we're here to help," Ryan said. "What do you need us to do?" Vera looked surprised. "Captain, your ships are small. The swarm bioships are each the size of a city. Your weapons appear to be projectile-based. I do not think you understand what you are facing." "Maybe not," Ryan admitted. "But we're here now. Give us a sector to defend, and we'll do our best." Vera hesitated. She didn't want to waste human lives, but she also couldn't send them away. Every ship might make a difference, even if it was only a small one. "Very well. Take position on our right flank. Try to stay behind our shield generators. When the swarm attacks, provide supporting fire. Do not engage their larger ships directly. You will be destroyed." "Understood, Admiral." The human ships moved into position. The Alliance officers watched them with a mixture of curiosity and pity. The human vessels were so primitive. Their hulls were made of simple metal alloys instead of adaptive energy matrices. Their weapons were basic kinetic projectiles instead of sophisticated plasma cannons. Commander Amy Foster commanded the destroyer Lightning Strike. She positioned her ship next to a massive Zephyrian battlecruiser that was 10 times her size. The alien vessel glowed with internal energy, its hull shimmering with protective fields. "This is like bringing a knife to a laser fight," her weapons officer muttered. "Maybe," Amy said, "but a knife can still cut." The swarm attacked an hour later. Bioships poured out of hyperspace like a living tide. Each one was a living creature, bred for war. Their hulls were made of hardened bone and cartilage. Their weapons were organic acid cannons that could melt. Through the strongest armor, the Alliance ships opened fire. Beams of pure energy lanced out, striking the swarm vessels. Some bioships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But for every one destroyed, 3 more took its place. The swarm returned fire. Streams of acid shot across space, hitting Alliance shields. The shields held, but they were weakening with each impact. "Human ships, provide covering fire," Admiral Vera ordered. "Target the smaller bioships. Leave the large ones to us." The human ships opened fire. Their weapons seemed laughably primitive compared to the Alliance energy beams. Simple projectiles shot out of metal barrels, traveling at a fraction of light speed. But something strange happened. The swarm bioships didn't expect the human weapons. Their defensive systems were designed to counter energy weapons. The simple metal slugs punched through their organic armor like it was paper. Bioships that could survive direct hits from plasma cannons were torn apart by primitive bullets. "Impossible," whispered Science Officer Lyra Starwind. "Their weapons are so simple, so basic. How are they so effective?" The answer came from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the human fleet scientist. She had been studying the swarm bioships since the battle began. "The swarm evolved to fight advanced civilizations," she explained over the communication link. "Their armor is designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons. They've never faced simple kinetic projectiles before." The battle intensified. Alliance ships focused their fire on the largest swarm vessels, while the humans targeted the smaller ones. It was working, but barely. The swarm kept coming, wave after wave of bioships, pouring out of hyperspace. Then disaster struck. A massive swarm bioship, larger than anything they had seen before, emerged from hyperspace. It was the size of a small moon, covered in weapon pods and armor plating. It fired a single shot at the Alliance flagship. The Stellar Dawn's shields collapsed instantly. The ship's hull began to melt under the acid attack. Commander Cale Thorne ordered all hands to abandon ship. "We're losing the flagship," Admiral Vera announced. "All ships fall back to secondary positions." But Captain Ryan Burke had a different idea. "All human ships, this is Burke. Form up on me. We're going to ram that thing." The Alliance officers couldn't believe what they were hearing. The humans wanted to ram a bioship that was 1,000 times their size. It was suicide. "Captain Burke, that is not tactically sound," Admiral Vera protested. "You will be destroyed." "Maybe," Ryan said. "But that thing is about to destroy your whole fleet. We have to try something." Commander Amy Foster was the first to respond. "Lightning strike moving to attack position. It's been an honor, Captain." One by one, the human ships formed up behind the Iron Will. They charged straight at the massive bioship, their primitive weapons firing continuously. The swarm vessel's defenses activated, sending streams of acid at the approaching humans. First human ship to die was the destroyer Thunder Bay. Captain Steve Jackson kept firing even as his ship was torn apart. The lightning strike was next. Commander Amy Foster's final transmission lost in static, but the human attack achieved something unexpected. The massive bioship turned its attention away from the Alliance fleet to deal with the human threat. This gave the Alliance ships time to regroup and coordinate their fire. "All Alliance vessels, target the bioship's weapon clusters," Admiral Vera ordered. "The humans are giving us an opening." The combined fire of the Alliance fleet struck the bioship's weapon pods. Explosions rippled across its surface. The creature was hurt, but not dead. Captain Ryan Burke's ship was the last human vessel still attacking. The Iron Will's hull was melting. His crew was dying, but he kept flying straight at the bioship. "For Earth," he whispered, then rammed his ship into the creature's main weapon cluster. The explosion was visible from 1,000 kilometers away. The bioship shuddered, its massive bulk torn by internal detonations. It began to drift, no longer able to maintain its position. The Alliance fleet poured fire into the wounded creature. Energy beams and plasma cannons ripped through its damaged hull. Finally, the bioship exploded in a burst of organic debris. The swarm attack faltered. The remaining bioships seemed confused, unsure of what to do without their command vessel. The Alliance pressed their advantage, driving the swarm back. Admiral Vera stared at the tactical display in amazement. They had won the battle. The swarm was retreating. But the cost had been terrible. Of the 47 human ships, only 12 remained. "Get me a communication link to the surviving human vessels," she ordered. Captain Tony Richards of the destroyer Wild Wind appeared on her screen. His ship was badly damaged, his face covered in blood, but he was still fighting. "Captain Richards, I don't know what to say. Your people saved us all." Tony looked tired but determined. That's what we do, Admiral. We fight when we should run. We stand when we should fall. And we never give up. But so many of your people died. So many ships lost. Yes, Tony said quietly. But their sacrifice wasn't for nothing. We hurt the swarm today. We showed them that they can be beaten. Doctor. Elena Rodriguez had been analyzing the battle data during the fight. Now she had news that would change everything. Admiral, I need to speak with you privately, she said. I've discovered something about the swarm. Something that could win us this war. Admiral Vera looked at the human scientist with new respect. These primitive humans had already done the impossible once. Maybe they could do it again. What did you find, Doctor? The swarm isn't as invincible as we thought. Their bioships are controlled by a central intelligence. If we can find that intelligence and destroy it, the entire swarm will collapse. That's impossible. The swarm has millions of ships spread across hundreds of star systems. Not impossible, Elena said. Just very, very difficult. And it will require the kind of tactics that your people would never consider. What kind of tactics? Elena smiled grimly. The kind that humans specialize in. The kind that civilized species think are insane. Admiral Vera realized that the war was far from over. The swarm would return, probably with even more ships. But now they had something they didn't have before. Allies who fought differently than anyone else in the galaxy. The humans had shown that the impossible could be achieved. Now they had to do it again, on a much larger scale. The real war was just beginning. The war room aboard the rebuilt Alliance flagship was crowded with officers from 7 different species. Admiral Vera Nightwhisper stood at the center, studying the holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. Red dots marked swarm positions. There were thousands of them, spread across hundreds of star systems. The situation is worse than we thought, Vera announced. Our victory 3 weeks ago was just the beginning. The swarm has regrouped and is attacking on 17 different fronts. They're moving faster than before, consuming entire worlds. In days instead of weeks. Commander Cale Thorne pointed to a cluster of red dots near the Alliance core worlds. They're targeting our industrial centers. If they take the shipyards at Kepler Prime, we won't be able to build new vessels. We need reinforcements, said Admiral Zephin of the Crystalline Collective. His body was made of living crystal that changed color with his emotions. Right now, he was a deep blue, the color of despair. Every day we lose more ships. Every day the swarm grows stronger. In the corner of the room, the surviving human. Officers watched the discussion. Captain Tony Richards looked tired but alert. His ship, the Wild Wind, was one of only 12 human vessels left. Beside him stood Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the scientist who had discovered the swarm's weakness. Dr. Rodriguez, Vera said, you mentioned that the swarm has a central intelligence. Have you learned anything more? Elena stepped forward. She had been working non-stop since the last battle, analyzing captured swarm biomaterial and studying their attack patterns. Yes, Admiral. The swarm operates like a giant organism. Each bioship is like a cell in a body. They're all connected to neural nexus ships that coordinate their actions. How many of these nexus ships are there? We think there are 7, 1 for each major swarm fleet. But there's something else, a master nexus that controls all the others. If we can find it and destroy it, the entire swarm will collapse. The room fell silent. The idea was tempting, but the practical problems were overwhelming. Doctor, even if we could locate this master nexus, it would be protected by thousands of bioships, Vera said. No fleet could fight through that many enemies. You're right, Elena admitted. No conventional fleet could do it. But we're not talking about conventional tactics. Captain Tony Richards stood up. Admiral, may I speak freely? Of course, Captain. Your people have been fighting the swarm for 5 years using traditional military doctrine. Formation flying, coordinated attacks, strategic withdrawal when facing superior odds. It's not working. Some of the alien officers looked offended. The Alliance military had perfected their tactics over thousands of years. They had won countless wars using these methods. Captain Richards, our military doctrine has been tested in hundreds of conflicts. Admiral Zethan protested. It is based on sound strategic principles. And that's exactly the problem, Tony said. The swarm has been fighting advanced civilizations for who knows how long. They've learned to counter your tactics. They expect you to act logically, to make rational decisions, to preserve your ships and crews when possible. Are you suggesting we should act irrationally? Asked Commander Kale. I'm suggesting we should act human. Dr. Elena Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing the previous battle. Look at what happened when Captain Burke rammed that bioship. The swarm didn't expect it. Their defensive systems weren't designed to handle a suicide attack. For a few crucial minutes, they were confused, unsure how to respond. That was one battle, Vera said. You're talking about attacking their main stronghold. The Master Nexus will be protected by their entire fleet. Then we don't attack their fleet, Elena said. We attack their expectations. She changed the display to show a tactical simulation. The swarm expects us to attack in formation, to try to fight our way through their defenses. Instead, we do something completely different. We split up, attack from multiple directions, use tactics that make no sense from a traditional military perspective. That's suicide, Admiral Zethan said. Maybe, Tony admitted. But it's the kind of suicide that might actually work. The discussion continued for hours. The Alliance officers were trained to think in terms of acceptable losses, strategic advantages, and logical outcomes. The human approach seemed to ignore all of these concepts. Finally, Admiral Vera called for a break. The alien officers filed out, discussing the proposal in hushed tones. Only the humans remained. Tony, are you sure about this? Elena asked. We're talking about asking the entire Alliance fleet to adopt human tactics. Tactics that got most of our ships destroyed in the first battle. Those tactics also won us the battle, Tony replied. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but crazy might be exactly what we need. Over the next few days, the human officers worked with Alliance scientists to develop new battle plans. The traditional approach would be to mass the fleet and attack the swarm's strongest position. The human approach was completely different. Commander Brad Sullivan proposed the most audacious part of the plan. His ship, the Thunderbolt, was one of the smallest in the fleet. We use our size as an advantage, he explained. While the big ships create a distraction, the smaller vessels slip through the swarm's defenses and attack the Nexus directly. How? Do you define slip through? Asked Lyra Starwind, the young Alliance scientist. We ram anything that gets in our way, Brad said simply. The Alliance officers were horrified. Ramming was considered the tactic of last resort, used only when all other options were exhausted. The humans were suggesting it as a primary strategy. You cannot be serious, Admiral Zethan protested. You would sacrifice your ships deliberately? If that's what it takes, Brad said. The way I see it, we're all going to die anyway if the swarm wins. At least this way, our deaths might accomplish something. Colonel Nina Clark had been studying the swarm's formation patterns. There's something else, she said. The swarm bioships are strongest when they work together. They're coordinated. Attacks are devastating, but they're not as good at dealing with individual threats. What do you mean? I mean, we don't attack as a fleet. We attack as individuals. Each ship picks its own target, its own route, its own tactics. We become unpredictable. The concept went against everything the Alliance had learned about space. Warfare. Coordinated attacks were more effective than individual actions. Fleet commanders needed to maintain control over their ships to respond to changing situations. That's not how space battles are fought, Commander Kale objected. Exactly, Nina said, and that's why it might work. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been developing the scientific basis for the human approach. I've been studying the swarm's neural patterns, she explained. They operate as a hive mind, making decisions based on predictable algorithms. When they encounter something truly chaotic, something that doesn't follow logical patterns, they hesitate. They try to analyze the situation instead of simply reacting. And that hesitation gives us an opening, Tony added. A very small opening, Elena warned. We're talking about seconds, not minutes. The swarm will adapt quickly once they understand what we're doing. The final plan was unlike anything in military history. Instead of a coordinated assault, it called for what the humans termed organized chaos. Ships would attack individually, using whatever tactics seemed most effective at the moment. There would be no formation flying, no coordinated movements, no strategic reserves. This is insane, Admiral Vera said after reviewing the plan. You're asking me to abandon 3,000 years of military doctrine. Yes, Tony said. I am. Because that military doctrine is exactly what the swarm expects. And if you're wrong, if this fails, then we all die. But we were going to die anyway. At least this way, we might take the swarm with us. The decision was made at the highest levels of the Alliance government. The ancient ones, who had lived for millions of years, and seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations, gave their blessing to the human plan. We have watched the swarm destroy everything we built, they said in their whisper-like voices. Traditional methods have failed. Perhaps it is time to try something new. The combined fleet began preparing for Operation Wildfire. Alliance ships were modified with human-designed ramming prows. Human tactics were taught to alien crews. Most importantly, fleet commanders were trained to think like humans, to embrace chaos instead of order, to accept acceptable losses, to fight even when victory seemed impossible. Not everyone was convinced. Admiral Zethan submitted a formal protest, arguing that the plan would result in the complete destruction of the Alliance fleet. You are asking us to commit suicide, he said. No, Admiral Vera replied. We're asking you to fight like humans. There's a difference. The night before the attack, Captain Tony Richards stood in his ship's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Tomorrow, he would lead his people into the greatest battle in galactic history. Most of them would not survive. Dr. Elena Rodriguez joined him. Having second thoughts? She asked. No, Tony said. I'm thinking about Earth, about all the people who don't even know this war is happening. They're going about their lives, working, falling in love, raising children. They have no idea that their fate is being decided out here. Do you think we can win? Tony was quiet for a long moment. I think we can surprise the swarm. I think we can hurt them badly. Whether that's enough to win. The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace in the Nexus system, where the swarm's master control ship waited. The sight that greeted them was terrifying. Thousands of bioships filled the space around a massive structure that looked like a living planet. The master Nexus was enormous, covered in weapon pods and protected by layers of defensive ships. By the ancient stars, whispered Admiral Vera as she stared at the tactical display. It's larger than our biggest space stations. Captain Tony Richards studied the enemy formation from the bridge of the Wild Wind. The swarm had arranged their ships in perfect defensive circles around the Nexus. It was exactly the kind of logical, predictable formation that human tactics were designed to exploit. All ships, this is Admiral Vera, came the transmission across the fleet. Operation Wildfire is now active. Remember your training. Trust your instincts. And may the stars guide us all. The traditional response would have been for the fleet to form up and attack as a unit. Instead, the ships scattered in all directions like startled birds. Alliance officers who had trained for centuries to maintain formation fought every instinct as they broke away from their wingmen. The swarm was confused. Their defensive algorithms were designed to counter coordinated attacks. This scattered assault pattern made no sense to their collective intelligence. For precious seconds, they hesitated. Lieutenant Maya White took advantage of that hesitation. Her fighter, the Shooting Star, dove straight into the swarm's formation. She flew between bioships that were 10 times her size, using their own bulk to shield her from enemy fire. "This is insane," her gunner muttered as they barrel-rolled between 2 massive bioships. "That's the point," Maya replied, firing at a weapon cluster as they passed. "Keep shooting. Don't think about it." The swarm's bioships tried to track her erratic flight path, but Maya wasn't following any pattern. She flew by instinct, dodging left when logic said to go right, diving when she should have climbed. The bioship's targeting systems couldn't predict her movements. Meanwhile, Commander Brad Sullivan led a group of destroyers in a direct assault on the Nexus itself. His ship, the Thunderbolt, was heavily damaged but still fighting. Half his crew was dead, but he kept pressing forward. "Sir, we can't take much more of this," his weapons officer reported. "Hull integrity is down to 30%. "Then we better make this count," Brad said. "All power to engines. We're going to ram that thing." The Alliance officers were horrified to see human ships deliberately flying into enemy fire. It went against every principle of space warfare. But it was working. The swarm's formations were breaking apart as bioships tried to respond to threats coming from every direction. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was monitoring the battle from the science vessel Discovery. Her sensors were tracking the swarm's neural patterns, looking for signs of the chaos she had predicted. "Admiral, I'm seeing massive confusion in the swarm's communication network," she reported. "Their collective decision-making is breaking down. They're trying to process too many unpredictable variables at once." "How long will it last?" Admiral Vera asked. "Not long. The swarm is adapting. We have maybe 10 minutes before they figure out how to counter our tactics." 10 minutes. That was all the time they had to reach the Master Nexus and destroy it. Captain Tony Richards was leading the main assault force straight through the heart of the swarm formation. His ship was taking heavy damage, but he kept pushing forward. Around him, other human ships were doing the same thing, flying directly into enemy fire, ramming bioships that got in their way, fighting with a desperation that the swarm had never encountered. "Sir, we're taking heavy casualties," his tactical officer reported. "We've lost 18 ships in the last 5 minutes. How many bioships have we destroyed?" "Over 200, sir, but there are thousands more." Tony looked at the tactical display. The human ships were small, bright dots surrounded by red enemy markers. They were outnumbered 50 to 1, but they were winning. Somehow, impossibly, they were winning. The key was unpredictability. Every time the swarm tried to predict human behavior, the humans did something completely different. When logic said to retreat, they advanced. When strategy demanded coordination, they scattered. When military doctrine called for preservation of forces, they launched suicide attacks. Commander Amy Foster had survived the first battle and was now leading a squadron of fighters in a desperate attack on the Nexus's main weapon clusters. Her ship, the Lightning Strike II, was named after the destroyer she had lost in the previous battle. "Remember what Captain Burke taught us," she transmitted to her squadron. "When in doubt, ram something." The fighters dove toward the massive Nexus, their small size allowing them to slip through the defensive fire. Amy's ship was hit by an acid stream that melted half her wing, but she kept flying. She had a clear shot at a major weapon cluster. "This is for Earth," she whispered, and flew her fighter straight into the target. The explosion was massive. The weapon cluster erupted in a chain reaction that spread across the Nexus's surface. Similar explosions were occurring all over the massive structure as human ships sacrificed themselves to damage critical systems. The swarm was beginning to adapt. Their bioships started moving in more random patterns, trying to match the humans' unpredictable behavior. But they were still thinking like a collective intelligence, still trying to find logical responses to illogical actions. "All Alliance ships, concentrate fire on the damaged sections," Admiral Vera ordered. "The humans have opened holes in their defenses. We need to exploit them now." The Alliance vessels had been providing supporting fire throughout the battle, but now they pressed forward with renewed confidence. The humans had shown them that the swarm could be hurt, could be confused, could be beaten. Commander Cale Thorne led a squadron of Zephyrian battle cruisers in a coordinated assault on the Ausult Nexus's communication arrays. His ships moved with the precision that had made the Alliance military famous, but now they were targeting weak points created by human sacrifice. "Target the neural clusters," he ordered. "If Dr. Rodriguez is right, damaging those will disrupt." The swarm's coordination. The battle was reaching its climax. The Master Nexus was heavily damaged, its surface scarred by explosions and weapon impacts. But it was still functional, still coordinating the swarm's attacks. And the human fleet was almost gone. Captain Tony Richards looked at his tactical display. Of the 12 human ships that had survived the first battle, only 3 remained. The Wild Wind was one of them, but barely. His ship was held together by emergency patches and sheer determination. "Sir, we're getting a message from Dr. Rodriguez." His communications officer reported. Alana's voice crackled through the static. "Tony, I've found it. The Nexus's main control center. It's protected by the heaviest armor, but there's a weak point. A ventilation shaft that leads directly to the core." "How big is this shaft?" "About the size of a fighter. Maybe a small shuttle." "It's a one-way trip, Tony. Whoever goes in isn't coming back out." Tony looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. They all knew what he was thinking. "I'll do it," he said quietly. "Sir, no," his tactical officer protested. "You're the senior officer. We need you to coordinate the fleet." "What fleet?" Tony asked sadly. "We're all that's left. And this is the only way to win." But before Tony could act, another voice came over the communication channel. "Negative. Captain Richards. This is Commander Gary Phillips of the Starfire. I'm closer to the target. I'll make the run." Tony had never met Gary Phillips, but he knew the man's reputation. He was a veteran pilot who had survived 3 different wars. His ship, the Starfire, was a converted cargo hauler that had been pressed into military service. "Gary, you don't have to do this," Tony said. "Yes, I do," Gary replied. "My ship is already damaged beyond repair. Might as well make it count." The Starfire broke away from the main battle, flying straight toward the Master Nexus. Gary's ship was small and fast, but it was also an easy target. Bioships swarmed toward him, firing streams of acid and organic projectiles. "All ships cover." "The Starfire," Admiral Vera ordered. "Give him a clear path to the target." The remaining Alliance ships threw everything they had at the swarm defenders. Energy beams and plasma cannons lit up the space around the Nexus. The human fighters that were still operational dove into the enemy formation, drawing fire away from Gary's ship. Lieutenant Maya White had somehow survived her earlier attack, and was now flying her badly damaged fighter in circles around the bioships, confusing their targeting systems. Her ship was falling apart, but she kept flying. "Come on, you ugly bugs," she taunted over the radio. Is that the best you can do? The starfire reached the Nexus's surface. Gary could see the ventilation shaft that Dr. Rodriguez had identified. It was a small opening, barely large enough for his ship. The armor around it was scarred from the battle, but still intact. "This is it," Gary announced. "If this doesn't work, it's been an honor serving with you all." "The honor was ours, Admiral." Vera replied. "Your species has shown us what courage really means." Gary flew his ship into the ventilation shaft. The walls scraped against his hull as he descended into the Nexus's interior. He could see the control center ahead, a massive chamber filled with organic computers and neural interfaces. "Dr. Rodriguez, I'm at the core." 3 months after the battle at the Nexus system, the Alliance held its first victory celebration in 5 years. The great hall on the capital world was filled with representatives from all 7 species, their different forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes under the crystal lights. Admiral Vera Nightwhisper stood at the center of the hall, but her attention was focused on the 2 humans sitting at the honor table. Captain Tony Richards and Dr. Elena Rodriguez were the only human survivors of the war. Their simple military uniforms looked plain compared to the elaborate dress of the alien dignitaries, but everyone in the hall knew they were the real heroes. "War is over," Vera announced. "The swarm has been defeated. Their remaining ships drift without purpose, their collective intelligence destroyed. We are free." The celebration lasted for hours. Songs were sung in languages that had been silent for years. Dances were performed that had been forgotten during the dark times. But through it all, Tony and Elena sat quietly, thinking about the friends they had lost. "Captain Richards," said Elder Thax of the Ancient Ones, his whisper-like voice somehow carrying across the noisy hall. "Your people have given us a great gift. Not just victory, but a new way of thinking about conflict. We would like to offer humanity full membership in the Alliance." Tony looked up from his untouched plate. "Thank you, Elder, but I need to discuss this with my government." "Of course, but there is more. We would like to share our technology with your species. Advanced weapons, faster ships, energy shields. Everything we have learned in our thousands of years of civilization." "That's very generous," Elena said carefully. "But we need to think about what's best for humanity." The alien dignitaries looked confused. Most species would jump at the chance to advance their technology by centuries. The humans seemed hesitant. Commander Cale Thorne, who had become something of a student of human tactics, understood their reluctance. "You're worried about losing what makes you human," he said. "Something like that," Tony admitted. "Our primitive technology, our chaotic tactics, our willingness to sacrifice everything, those things save the galaxy. If we become too advanced, too civilized, we might lose the very qualities that make us useful allies." The discussion continued late into the night. The Alliance wanted to reward humanity for their sacrifice. The humans wanted to make sure they didn't lose their identity in the process. Finally, a compromise was reached. Humanity would join the Alliance as an equal partner, but they would maintain their own military doctrine and technology. The Alliance would provide scientific knowledge and medical advances, but humans would continue to build their own ships and train their own soldiers. "We value your uniqueness," Elder Thax said. "Perhaps that is the lesson of this war. That diversity makes you as stronger." The next morning, Tony and Elena stood in the Alliance's Hall of Remembrance. The walls were covered with the names of everyone who had died fighting the swarm. The human section was small but prominent, listing the names of 45 ships and over 2,000 people. "They deserved better," Tony said quietly. "They got exactly what they wanted," Elena replied. "They got to make a difference." A young Alliance officer approached them. It was Lyra Starwind, the scientist who had first suggested contacting humanity. She had been promoted to head of the new Tactical Innovation Department, a position created specifically to study human military methods. Captain Richards, Dr. Rodriguez, she said, I wanted to thank you personally. Your people didn't just save us. They changed us. How so? Elena asked. We've always believed that logic and order were the keys to victory. Your species taught us that sometimes chaos is more powerful than coordination. We're teaching your methods in our military academies now. Tony smiled sadly. Just remember, those methods come with a price. We lost almost everyone. We remember, Lyra said solemnly. Every cadet learns the names of your fallen. They're considered heroes throughout the Alliance. Later that day, Tony and Elena boarded the Discovery, the last human warship, for the journey home. The ship had been repaired and upgraded with Alliance technology, but it still looked distinctly human, crude, and functional, rather than elegant and beautiful dot as they prepared to leave. Admiral Vera came aboard for a final meeting, the Alliance. Council has asked me to give you this, she said, handing Tony a small crystal device. It's a communication beacon. If humanity is ever in danger, activate it and the entire Alliance fleet will come to your aid. And if the Alliance is threatened again, then we'll call on humanity. Your people have shown us that some battles can only be won by those willing to fight when victory is impossible. The Discovery departed for Earth, carrying its 2 passengers, and the memory of humanity's first interstellar war. The journey would take 2 weeks, giving Tony and Elena time to prepare their report for the world leaders. What do we tell them? Elena asked as they sat in the ship's observation deck, watching. The stars streamed past. The truth, Tony said, that we found out we're not alone in the universe, that we made friends, that we fought a war and won, and that it cost us almost everything. Do you think it was worth it? Tony considered the question. Thousands of humans had died in the war, but billions of aliens had been saved. The galaxy was free from the swarm's threat. New alliances had been formed that would last for centuries. Ask me in 100 years, he said finally, when we see what humanity does with the opportunities we've earned. Dr. Elena Rodriguez spent the journey writing her scientific report on the swarm. Her research had led to the discovery of their weakness, but it had also revealed something troubling. The swarm wasn't natural. It had been created by someone, or something else, designed as a weapon of mass destruction. Tony, I need to tell you something, she said as they neared Earth. The swarm wasn't acting on its own. Someone sent it to destroy the Alliance. Someone who's still out there. Another enemy? Maybe. Or maybe just someone who wanted to test our defenses. Either way, this war might not be over. The Discovery arrived at Earth to find a world that had changed dramatically. The news of the alien war had united humanity in ways that centuries of diplomacy had failed to achieve. The old national boundaries still existed, but they seemed less important. Now that humans knew they were part of a larger galactic community, Admiral Lessa Thompson met them at the spaceport. She looked older than when they had left, aged by the responsibility of commanding humanity's first interstellar fleet. Welcome home, she said. The whole world has been waiting for your report. How are the families? Tony asked. The families of the people we lost? They're proud, Lisa said. Sad, but proud. They know their loved ones died as heroes. The debriefing took place in the Pentagon, with leaders from every major nation in attendance. Tony and Elena told their story, the desperate alliance, the impossible odds, the sacrifice of the human fleet. So what happens now? Asked the Secretary General of the United Nations. Now we rebuild, Tony said. We build a bigger fleet, train. More officers, prepare for the next threat. Because there will be a next threat. The galaxy is a dangerous place. And the Alliance? They're our friends now. They'll help us advance our technology, but they want us to stay human. They've learned that sometimes the primitive approach is the most effective. The meeting continued for hours, but the conclusion was clear. Humanity would join the galactic community, but on their own terms. They would maintain their military independence while cooperating with the Alliance on scientific and cultural exchange. A year later, the first joint human-alien research station was established in orbit around Earth. Scientists from 7 species worked together, sharing knowledge and developing new technologies. But the station's security was provided by human guards, trained in the chaotic tactics that had won the war. Captain Tony Richards was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Earth Defense Force. His first act was to commission a memorial ship, the UES Remembrance, carrying the names of every human who had died in the war. Dr. Elena Rodriguez continued her research into the swarm's origins. Her work led to the discovery of other ancient weapons scattered throughout the galaxy, sleeping threats that could awaken at any time. She founded the Institute for Galactic Threats, a joint human-alien organization dedicated to finding and neutralizing these dangers. The Alliance changed as well. The rigid military doctrines that had served them for millennia were replaced by more flexible approaches. Officers were trained to think creatively, to embrace chaos when necessary, to consider unconventional solutions to impossible problems. The new doctrine was summarized in a simple phrase that was carved into the walls of every Alliance military academy: when victory is impossible, fight like humans. Years passed. The galaxy remained at peace, but it was a peace guarded by constant vigilance. The Alliance fleet patrolled the outer systems, searching for signs of new threats. Earth's growing fleet provided the unpredictable element that kept potential enemies off balance. Sometimes, late at night, Admiral Tony Richards would stand on the observation deck of his flagship and look out at the stars. He would think about the friends he had lost, the battles he had fought, and the price of victory. The galaxy was safe, but that safety had been purchased with human blood. It was a debt that could never be fully repaid, but it was won.